Hello, everybody. I'm Phil Brandt, President and CEO of AIM Employers Association, and welcome to This Week at Work.
Welcome to the only show about the workplace that offers you front row seats and a microphone, bringing you practical, timely, and accurate insight so that you can more effectively lead your organization. It's Thursday, November 17th, episode 206. Today, the holiday season is upon us, a time of planning, reflecting, and celebrating, and HR is at the center of it all. You may be concerned that your holiday party isn't inclusive enough, or that it will open you up to harassment risks. You may be unsure about what legalizing the recreational use of marijuana means to your organization. Heck, what about employees getting high at your office party? Plus, Burt joins us from a very special location. Now speak up, take the poll, and ask your questions now. All this and more on This Week at Work.
All right. Hey, Nick, before I go on with anything else, did you just say, what about getting high at your office party?
I did.
Oh, my goodness. We are going to talk about that. All right. That's going to be on the agenda here in a little bit. We're going to squeeze that in. Welcome back, everyone. Great to have you with us. As always, we have Burt Garland with the shareholder Ogletree Deacons. Burt is coming to us from a very special location. Now, a special location for me was Lake of the Ozarks while we were out doing a little special bass fishing. Now, Burt's a little more sophisticated than I am. Burt, welcome to the program today. So excited that you're able to join us. Tell us where you're at and what you're doing. All right, Burt, tell us where you're at and what you're doing.
So, Phil, I appreciate that very much. Hopefully you can hear me.
We can hear you great.
Hopefully you can hear me okay.
And see
great.
You. Wonderful.
So, I am in Israel, fortunate enough to be sitting across from the Western Wall. And behind me, you can see the Western Wall, which is the old foundation wall for the second Jewish temple. On top of that, you can see the Dome of the Rock, which is the holiest site for the Muslim, one of the holiest sites for the Muslim population in the world. Of course, the Western Wall being the holiest site in Judaism. And just off to my right over here is the one of the holiest sites for the Christian faith. Behind me is, I think, the Greek church or the Christian quarter, all within a couple of acres of each other. So I am here with, as a volunteer with the Jewish Federation of St. Louis, studying, or we're on a mission here to discuss really what's called plurality in Israel, which is sort of the next iteration of what we call in the United States diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I am actually sitting on top of out on a patio or a balcony of a group here in St. Louis called Aish HaTorah. There's a group in St. Louis called Aish HaTorah, which is part of a much bigger organization called Aish. And they were gracious enough to allow me to use their space. Aish, of course, is not responsible for or endorsing anything we talk about here today. But just so everyone knows, Aish and the work Aish does around the world for Jewish education and empowerment can be found online. They're a tremendous resource and asset to people of Jewish faith. So I've said on the program before, I am of Jewish faith. It's not something that I hide ever. And I thought it would be really special for our audience today to be able to see a broadcast from this particular location.
Yeah, that is fantastic. Now, this isn't your first trip to Jerusalem.
This is not my first trip to Jerusalem or Israel. This is my sixth trip since 2010. Fortunately, I was here, I guess, in February of 2020, right before COVID hit, and have not been able to come back to Israel until just recently.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you're there as a volunteer with the Jewish Federation of St. Louis, which is a member of AIM, and they're a great member of AIM. They take place for taking a lot of the activities that we're involved in. Burt, or I have to ask you this question is, tell us about security and personal safety while you're there. The media sometimes makes it out to be a little bit of a dangerous place.
Yeah, so and there is no question that there are dangerous places that you can be. I'm going to turn the camera around. I hope I don't lose my connection, but if anybody can see, you could see people down by the Western Wall, many of them dressed in black. Those would be people of Jewish faith that are down there praying. I'm going to peer over into the Muslim quarter, which you could see by those pine trees over there. And maybe we just missed a group that was studying over there that was just walking away from the Temple Mount after their studies. And as I mentioned before, you could see the Greek Orthodox Church off pretty much to the center of the screen. And, you know, if you ask me, this is probably one of the most peaceful places I've ever been on the entire planet, except for Friday night, of course, when it's Shabbat here. It's really pretty amazing.
Yeah, that is, that's just awesome to be able to
very vibrant.
Burt, that's awesome to share that and have you a part of that. Some of the chat line is saying thank you for sharing. It's looks like an amazing experience. We're happy to be able to bring that to you. It definitely beats my experience at Lake of the Ozarks, which I thought was very tranquil, but that looks to be like just an amazing trip. And I think it's really special for our listeners that you're able to join from there. Let's get on with the program. If anything exciting happens you want to share with us, please jump right in. We do want to hear from you. We have a poll for today, and that is, what do you think is the best reason to have an office holiday party? You got a choice of 6 options. Again, we don't like all and above, so pick the one that you think best fits the reason you have an office holiday party. And we're going to try and do Lawyer on the Clock. Burt, are you ready for Lawyer on the Clock?
I'm close enough, Phil.
All right. Well, you go for it and give us your best shot. Ready? Let's roll.
All right, it's time to look into what's trending in employment law. You're on the clock.
All right. So the first thing that I have to talk about with Lawyer on the Clock, because we got so many comments about it after last week's program, and I've been getting questions about it all week, has to do with what topic would you guess, Phil? We talked about it last time.
Oh, I would have to assume weed.
Yes, weed at work.
I'd have to be. I've had that question so many times, Burt. In fact, I hope you're okay with this, but I've been telling people you and I are going to do a program in December on this as it relates to Missouri. So I don't know if you're okay with that, but I've committed you.
I am okay with that. We're on the way to getting that scheduled, and we're going to have a great program about that so that people better understand what this law is and how, as employers, you can still protect sort of the sanctity and safety of your workforce. You don't have to tolerate employees high at work. And that's the big point that I want to make. I've had several questions this week from people who have called in and they've asked me, what do we do in the hiring process? We have a drug screen, we test people for weed, and a lot of times we would exclude somebody who tests positive for marijuana. And right now, frankly, most of my clients, not all, but most of my clients, especially those with non-safety sensitive positions, have stopped testing for marijuana. If you are an employer and you still do not want to permit or tolerate anyone at work being under the influence of marijuana at work, you still have that absolute right. And the question then becomes, what does it mean to be under the influence? This law does protect people from being terminated because of their off-duty use of marijuana. But I don't want anybody to get confused. While you can't terminate somebody because they choose to use recreational marijuana, you as the employer do not have to tolerate, nor should you tolerate them being under the influence at work. And as I've said many times before, that's where the rubber meets the road. We as the employer need to understand and be able to train our supervisors what it means to be under the influence. There are no reliable tests right now that you can go up to somebody like you can with alcohol and catch them with marijuana under the influence of marijuana. Much easier to do with alcohol. And so what you can do, though, is you can train your employees, train your supervisors on what are called the indicia of impairment. And if you find that somebody is impaired, if they seem to be impaired due to weed usage or frankly anything else, then you can send them for testing. And if you have those indicia of impairment combined with that positive test, then you are in a very strong position to terminate the employee. I also do want to mention real quickly, Phil, and we'll dig into this much more on our Right to Weed program that we're going to put on in December, that there are additional protections for people who possess medical marijuana cards, but the additional protections offered by the new law really are largely consistent with how we've been advising employers that even if people have a medical marijuana card, they still can't necessarily be at work under the influence.
Right. And I think the big question that I have had in our roundtable sessions, I got 2 more roundtables today. I anticipate that they will come up as well. And that is, should someone test positive, doesn't mean they're under the influence, but should they test positive as a result of a workplace test, whether it was random or it was post-accident or any other reason, does that give you grounds for termination, assuming they're not medical? You don't have to answer that right now, but that is something we're going to get into in some detail in our program.
Yep. Phil,
Yeah.
Can I cover 2 more real quickly while I'm lawyer on the clock here?
Yes, go for it.
The first one I want to talk about is, and it's been getting a lot of press lately. Yesterday, a bill to protect same-sex marriage overwhelmingly passed through the Senate. And this is a bipartisan bill to protect same-sex and interracial marriage. And that there was a vote of 62 to 37 to break a filibuster on this particular issue. So they got more than the 60 votes necessary to push this bill through. In the event the Supreme Court would overturn its 2015 decision in Obergefell versus Hodges that legalized same-sex marriage, a state could still pass a law to ban same-sex marriage, but that state would be required to recognize a same-sex marriage from another state. And so this bill, even though the Supreme Court right now has said that same-sex marriage is lawful to a great extent, this offers additional protection for people who want to marry if they're of the same gender. The other one that I wanted, did you want to ask a question?
No, that's good. You're right on cue. Keep going.
I'm trying to fly, just giving people some of the highlights. The other one that I did want to talk about real quickly is the House yesterday passed a bill that would nullify some non-disclosure agreements when employees allege sexual harassment or assault. And that would really be a landmark measure that would tackle those pacts on a federal level. A lot of times when there are claims of sexual harassment or assault in the workplace, that there are confidentiality or non-disclosure agreements that are made parts of those parts of the settlements of those cases. And what this law is going to do, it's really going to nullify those non-disclosure agreements and make them really illegal to put, or not illegal, but unenforceable to put into a settlement agreement. And this is in direct response to the Me Too movement that we've been seeing really since probably I know it started earlier than this, but it really became a hot topic in 2015, 2016 area.
Yeah. And I mean, that to me makes sense. I'm sure there are scenarios where that can put companies in additional risk beyond the sexual assault scenario. But to me, that just makes sense that if there's that kind of wrongdoing, we have to expose it and get that out of the workplace. No space for it.
Correct.
So hopefully that continues to move itself forward and become not an issue. All right, Burt.
Well, and just to say that the policy goal behind this is to, weed out the serial offenders, that they can't continue to protect themselves over time with these non-disclosure agreements, that there are consequences to their behavior just beyond a monetary settlement.
Absolutely, for sure. And speaking of that, great job, lawyer on the clock. we are going to go into Burt's forum, and we're going to keep that in mind as we talk about a few of these memes for holiday parties, excuse me. All right, Nick.
You've just entered Filbert's Forum, where we peel the onion back and take a lighter look at the workplace.
Burt, I don't know if you can read these memes where you're at, but avoiding drinking too much at the office Christmas party by drinking too much before the holiday or office Christmas party. That's a great meme. I think drinking at holiday parties is probably the number one question, but now we have to consider with recreational marijuana getting high as well. We know that these are rules that people that kind of understand. We sometimes fudge them, we push them a little bit, but that's a great meme, and I want to get some opinions on that. One that's a little bit more risque, and we've all seen it in movies, is the next one here, where the photocopier is broken and they're doing a little artwork at the holiday party. Hopefully no one's going to have to deal with that. Unfortunately, I am ashamed to say I did work someplace where someone jumped up on the photocopier once. They thought it was funny at a holiday party. Now that's going back 20 years, but that doesn't make me any more proud. And then the last one that I personally like here is the one, what's this lady, Marge or Nick, do you have that one with the, she's on a lot of cards. She's really popular. That's her. That's it right there. She goes, a Christmas party at work with coworkers. Can I just poke myself in the eye instead? So not everyone's looking forward to these holiday parties. It seems like everyone's having fun, but some people just don't enjoy them. But that's Filbert's forum. No short of memes if you look them up online, but use them responsibly. All right, Burt, let's talk about holiday parties and drinking or the use of recreational weed at work, whatever might be the case. Give us the lowdown on the do's and don'ts.
Well, I'm going to boil it down to something fairly simple. And this is a reminder that we at my law firm get and give around holiday season and at firm events. We do a lot of national firm events. And we always encourage our attorneys, especially our younger attorneys, not to engage in what we call career limiting behavior.
Right.
And I think if you sort of adhere to that rule, avoid engaging in career limiting behavior, what it does, it kind of makes a little bit of a tongue in cheek remark to people, but it puts the responsibility on them to behave responsibly at a party, because you know what, those things have consequences if you misbehave. And you want people to enjoy themselves at these parties, but you also want them to enjoy themselves responsibly. And I think that that's sort of the key point there, is that while people can have a good time, you don't want it to get out of hand. And so if you are an employer and you choose to serve alcoholic beverages at a holiday party, more power to you, but just make sure things don't get out of hand. You may want to have some people, members of management in particular, avoid consuming the alcoholic beverages at these events so that they are responsible and can sort of disrupt any other inappropriate behavior that they may be witness to. I've said before many times on the program and in all of the trainings that I do, like it or not, you are a manager and a supervisor 24/7. And if you are with your subordinate employees, you as the manager have a responsibility to sort of keep an eye on things, a spotter, if you will, a holiday party spotter. And what you can do is if you are avoiding the alcohol or you are consuming, but it is very, very, very limited and moderate, you're in a position to tamp down any inappropriate behavior that may occur at one of the holiday parties. You brought up a whole other issue, Phil, though, that what happens when people show up to these things and they've been getting high for hours before the holiday party. Like I said, try to encourage people to avoid that career limiting behavior and let them know that there will be consequences for them showing up and being disruptive If somebody shows up and they're high and they're mellow and that's all that the problem is, and they eat you out of house and food, whatever the phrase is, house and home,
yeah.
because they're so hungry because of the marijuana, you know what, that's something we could probably tolerate. But if they show up and they're disruptive and, you know, add alcohol on top of it, you want to tamp that behavior down very, very quickly so that it doesn't lead to a harassment complaint, or even worse, some sort of an assault type situation at a holiday party.
Now, I know some of the practices I've enjoyed over the years. We have different types of holiday parties, those for our members, those for our employees. In any case, we limit the number of drinks that are available just to help control that and encourage responsible drinking and avoid the career limiting behavior. That isn't to say I haven't experienced people going just a little too far on the drinks if they've been able to purchase more on their own, or they're bringing their own flask or their own eggnog, whatever happens. I'm not quite sure, but I have had people get out of control. So it brings up the issue of how, when we recognize if someone is impaired, then we have that additional responsibility to help them get home safely, wherever that might be. And that's something also not to look past. If they're leaving our premises or our party, even if it's at a special location off-site, we still have that responsibility if people have been drinking and then getting in their car and driving, or even smoking weed and getting in the car. So any form of impairment falls upon us as an organization. Nick, let's take a look at the poll results and see why are our members and listeners today having holiday parties. So I guess we look at this, Burt, I'll help you out. It looks like we are in a dead tie between at 30% foster conversations between employees who typically do not interact, and as well as rewarding and recognizing employees. So we want to reward, recognize, foster, closely followed by establish or underscore preferred culture. In the chat area here, we have Lane. She's got a really good comment. She's talking about the opportunity for teammates to get to meet one another's spouses, enjoy another side of work. And I assume she's referring to the personal side. And Pam is referencing culture. There's more than one answer that applies. Of course there is, Pam, but we don't like to make it easy. We want to hear your comments and what you feel is more important or less important than other reasons. But those are some interesting results. Most of the holiday parties I know, I would say it's 50-50 whether or not spouses are invited or not. Here at the AIM office, we go out in the early afternoon and we enjoy lunch. And then we let people off work for a few hours to get a head start on their day on a Friday. Hopefully encourage them to, go out and do some things that they would not normally do for the holiday season, just to relieve a little stress in that. I also got to remind people, be careful about the gifts. I got naughty and nice back here on the screen, and I have seen gifts given by the company that could be a little bit risque, and you just want to be careful about gifts or things that you're doing as far as playing games. I've seen the naughty and nice game that gets played, and that gets a little risque. It's a lot of fun, but it's a little risque, and not an area you want to get caught in promoting that type of behavior at the workplace as well. I would say everything starts out with a little bit of fun. Go ahead, Burt.
Yeah, and Phil, let me just jump in by saying with the gifts, a lot of times these things are fine and okay in the moment. But when an employee gets dissatisfied with their job down the road, or they feel that they've been marginalized at work and they're ready to move on, they end up filing a charge of discrimination. And what do they allege? They allege that they were given an inappropriate gift at a holiday party as one of the examples of harassment that they received while at work. And so, right, just be mindful that what might be funny and entertaining and even acceptable today may be turned around against you down the road and cited as an example of yet another piece of the inappropriate behavior that the employee was subjected to.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because you said something really key there. You said something that may be appropriate today. and it might be borderline and it might be 100% appropriate today, but fast forward 5 or 6 years and things are changing very rapidly, just as it relates to the the Marriage Protection Act. I mean, there was no chance at that passing just 20 years ago. And today, bipartisan support, and most people are like, yeah, what's the big deal? And that would be an example of how things evolve and can be easily interpreted differently.
Well, and a lot of times we see this, I know it's not holiday party related, but certainly we see it at retirement parties when people retire and people are cracking jokes and giving gifts to somebody who's retiring. And then another older employee cites that as an example of how the company promotes ageism.
Yeah.
Just need to be mindful of things.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. That's a good one for me to keep in mind. Hey, Burt, I want to change topics here unless there's something more you want to say on the holiday party, but I want to talk about Elon Musk for a minute, and as it relates to Twitter and some of the things that he's doing. I'm just lost myself on the screen. Anyway, so either way, so Elon Musk sends out a note of employment to all of his employees, as I understand it. And basically, if I can find his quote, basically says, if you are sure that you want to be part of the new Twitter, please click yes on the link below. Musk continued. Anyone who has not done so by 5 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, that was Thursday, will receive 3 months of severance. Whatever decision you make, thank you for your efforts to make Twitter successful. Now, he had some messaging before that was said, it's going to be hard work, lots of work. And everyone's going to basically have a different approach as it relates to the workplace. When you hear that, how does Elon Musk get away with that? Is that something we can all go away and do?
Well, what he's doing is he's establishing a new baseline. And a lot of times we encourage employers to do these types of things, such as when they roll out a new employee handbook, for example. An employer that's tolerated people engaging in certain practices in the past, if you want to end the reliance on those past practices, you establish a new baseline. And you say through like a new employee handbook, for example, we are no longer going to tolerate employees who are late to work. We are no longer going to tolerate employees who have engaged in certain misconduct in the workplace. And what he's doing is he's really establishing that new baseline. He's a new owner. He has the right, he has the opportunity to do that as he moves into the operation. It's actually a little bit harder for employers to establish that new baseline when there isn't a change of ownership. And that's why I encourage employers to do those types of things in conjunction with rolling out something like a new handbook.
Yeah. Okay. And again, we don't know what else he has done. That seems to be, the news media making something of it. But bold move. I like the clarity of it. Click it. If you don't, you're getting your severance check. I'm sure there's some HR person somewhere pulling out their hair who has to deal with all the outcomes of this. But that's a great classic move. Hey,
guys, do you think that's how he got his first girlfriend? A little check
yes or no.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't know. I stopped doing that after I got about 5 no's. So I took a different approach there, Nick. Hey, another question here, Burt. I got one from Lane. She's got a great question. They plan to do a white elephant gift exchange. And of course, for anyone that may or may not be aware, that's, people bring gifts, you put it up, it's anonymous who brought the gift. Is there any form of guidelines that should be considered in something like that? It seems innocent enough, but almost anything could happen when it's anonymous.
Yeah, Lane, I think that's a great question. And again, I would encourage people as sort of guidelines to avoid bringing any gift that might be considered offensive or discriminatory to someone else. While you could be funny, you just don't want it to cross the line. You don't want somebody showing up with like, as a gift, like a sexy Santa suit or something like that. that would be inappropriate. So while they can have fun and should be encouraged to have fun, they should be also reminded not to engage in that career-limiting behavior.
Burt, I don't know why you wanted to talk about a sexy Santa suit, but we're just going to not take that any further. Something tells me.
Let me turn a little bit, so I'm facing the Christian quarter. So we're talking about Christmas now.
Yeah, there you go. The sexy Santa, the Christian sexy Santa suit. All right, that's good. All right, Burt, I think that takes us. I can't thank you enough for joining us while you're on your mission trip there, doing some really good work for the world and making it a better place. I'm glad to have a partnership with you. I hope our listeners enjoy that as well. You had to take time from your friends and family there. We will be off next week on Thanksgiving and back after that. We will be talking about weed at work. Look for the information as it relates to the program we're going to put out between Burt and I. We plan to simulcast that so you can attend live or in person, depending on where you come from. Until then, go out and be good to people.
Thank you once again for tuning in to This Week at Work. If you enjoy the show, please share it with your colleagues. Forward our invites. Share the link, aimea.org/thisweekatwork, or follow or subscribe wherever you get your news and entertainment, like LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere you are. And you can be part of the show. Send your questions and comments anytime to info@thisweek.work. We'll see you next week, 7:30 a.m. Central Time, when we discuss what's happening this week at work.